Aging changes are not inevitable. At 75, Mr. James began to feel that his body was not what it used to be. He once enjoyed morning walks around the park near his home. But lately, even a short stroll left him exhausted. Every step up the stairs sent a sharp pain through his knees. And bending down to pick up something had become a challenge. "I'm old now. This is normal," Mr. James told himself. But one day, as he was about to step down from his porch, he stumbled and almost fell. Luckily, his son caught him just in time. Looking at him with concern, his son said, "Dad, you can't keep going on like this. You need to do something to take care of your health." His son's words made Mr. James reflect. He suddenly thought of an old friend, Mr. Robert, 78 years old, who could still ride his bike and climb stairs without any trouble. Determined to find out his secret, Mr. James asked him. Mr. Robert chuckled and patted his friend's shoulder. "Don't blame aging. The body weakens because we move less, not because we grow older." From that day on, Mr. James changed his mindset. Instead of accepting decline, he started making small changes, standing up and walking around more often, stretching every morning, and doing light exercises throughout the day. After just a month, he realized he could walk farther without feeling tired, and his knees hurt less. Aging changes are not inevitable, as long as you keep moving and take care of your body. Your health can still improve. After deciding to change his lifestyle, Mr. James began forming a new habit. Each morning, instead of sitting too long with his coffee, he went outside for a walk around the neighborhood. At first, just 10 minutes left him exhausted. But he didn't give up. He remembered what Mr. Robert had told him. Our body is like a machine. If we don't use it, it rusts. But if we move properly, it becomes strong again. One day, Mr. James went to the park and saw a group of seniors exercising. A woman named Linda, 72 years old but full of energy, invited him to join their gentle workout session. At first, he felt a little hesitant, but after seeing them do simple movements like stretching and standing up and sitting down, he decided to give it a try. As days passed, Mr. James noticed a remarkable difference. His body no longer felt as heavy as before. Climbing stairs was no longer a struggle. And most importantly, he no longer stumbled when stepping down from his porch. He realized that his body truly needed movement to maintain its strength. One morning, while walking with his son, Mr. James smiled and said, "I wish I had started sooner." His son looked at him proudly and replied, "It's never too late, Dad." From that moment on, Mr. James no longer saw age as a limitation. Instead, he understood that staying active and taking care of himself was the key to living a healthy life, at any age. One afternoon, after finishing his exercise, Mr. James stopped by his favorite cafe to rest. There, he ran into an old friend, Mr. Thomas, whom he hadn't spoken to in a long time. They sat down, sipping hot tea and catching up on each other's lives. Mr. Thomas sighed. "You're lucky, James. I always feel exhausted, like I have no energy for anything. I guess it's just age. Sooner or later, we all go through it." Mr. James shook his head, set down his cup, and smiled. "I used to think the same way. But then I realized that fatigue isn't just a normal part of aging. It's our body's way of telling us that we need to make a change." He shared his journey with Thomas, how, in the beginning, even a 10-minute walk left him drained. How the aches and pains he once blamed on aging were actually a result of neglecting his body. He emphasized, tiredness isn't destiny. If we move properly, eat well, and rest sufficiently, our bodies can regain their vitality. Mr. Thomas sat in silence for a moment before letting out a deep sigh. "Maybe I should start making changes too. But, is it too late?" Mr. James chuckled. "It's never too late to become healthier." From that day on, Thomas took small steps toward a more active lifestyle. And with each passing day, he began to realize that life didn't have to be defined by exhaustion. After his conversation with James, Mr. Thomas began changing his lifestyle. He started walking every morning, paying more attention to his diet, and ensuring he got enough sleep. Although his body grew stronger, a lingering doubt remained. Could he truly transform his life completely? One morning, as usual, James and Thomas met at the park. Noticing that Thomas seemed deep in thought, James asked. "Why do you still look a bit weary?" Thomas sighed. "I've been exercising and eating right. But I still feel tired and discouraged sometimes. Maybe age is still a barrier I can't overcome." James chuckled and patted his friend on the shoulder. "You know, it's not just our bodies that need training, our minds do too. If you keep thinking that age is a barrier, then it will become one." He then shared a story about an old friend, William, who had been diagnosed with a chronic illness. Instead of feeling defeated, William maintained an optimistic outlook, believing that his health was still within his control through a positive mindset. Because of that, he lived joyfully and energetically, despite his condition. After listening, Thomas reflected for a moment before nodding. "Maybe I need to change the way I think, too." James smiled. "Exactly. A strong body can only reach its full potential when paired with a positive mind." From that day on, Thomas not only exercised but also learned to adopt a more optimistic mindset. Over time, he realized that true health comes not just from the body, but from the way we choose to view life. After his conversations with James, Thomas gradually changed his lifestyle and mindset. He felt healthier, and his spirit became more optimistic. However, there was still one issue he couldn't solve: his sleep. Despite eating well and exercising regularly, Thomas often struggled to sleep through the night. He would wake up in the middle of the night and find it difficult to fall back asleep. Even when he got enough hours of rest, he still woke up feeling exhausted. One day, while meeting James, Thomas sighed, "I've done everything right, but my sleep is still terrible." James nodded thoughtfully and asked, "What do you usually do before bed?" Thomas thought for a moment and replied, "I check the news on my phone or read the newspaper." James laughed. "No wonder. The blue light from your phone disrupts your sleep cycle. Not to mention that negative news can make your mind restless." He explained that good sleep wasn't just about the number of hours but also about preparing properly for rest. He advised Thomas to turn off electronic devices an hour before bed. Read something light, or listen to relaxing music instead. Taking his friend's advice, Thomas made some changes. He created a new bedtime routine, turning off his phone early, making a cup of herbal tea, and reading a few pages of a book before sleeping. Within just a week, his sleep had improved significantly. One morning, when he met James at the park, Thomas grinned and said, "You were right, sleeping well really gives me so much more energy." James patted his shoulder. "Sleep is the best natural remedy. Taking care of your sleep means taking care of your health." One morning, Thomas sat in his living room, sipping coffee and reading a book. He felt stiffness in his body, especially in his back and knees. When he stood up to get more coffee, he suddenly realized that his movements felt heavier than usual. A little while later, James came to visit. Noticing Thomas struggling to stand up, he frowned and asked, "What's wrong? You look stiff." Thomas sighed, "I think I'm really getting old. Every morning, my back aches, and my knees creak like an old door." James burst out laughing. "It's not because of aging, it's because you sit too much." Thomas looked surprised. "What does sitting have to do with it?" James explained, "Our bodies are designed for movement. When you sit too long, your muscles and joints become less flexible. Blood circulation slows down, and that increases stiffness and reduces mobility." Thomas suddenly realized that ever since retiring, he had spent most of his time sitting, reading, watching the news, or talking on the phone. Other than his exercise sessions with James, he hardly moved around. "So what should I do?" Thomas asked. James suggested, "Every 30 minutes, stand up, stretch, or walk around for a few minutes. Try doing certain activities while standing, like talking on the phone or drinking tea. And if possible, walk more throughout the day." Determined to make a change, Thomas set a reminder to stand up every half an hour, take short walks around the house, stretch, and do light movements. Within just a week, he felt a noticeable difference. His body was less stiff, his knees moved more smoothly, and the heaviness he felt when standing up had disappeared. Meeting James at the park, Thomas grinned and said, "You're like an unofficial doctor, but a really good one. Thanks to you, I no longer feel like an old, creaky man." One afternoon, Thomas sat in his living room, with daylight filtering through the curtains. Yet he didn't bother to pull them open. Lately, He had been feeling sluggish, and his mood wasn't great. Despite getting enough sleep, he remained fatigued throughout the day. When James came over, he immediately noticed how dim the room was. "Thomas, why don't you open the curtains and let some light in?" James asked. Thomas shrugged. "I don't think it makes much difference. Besides, I've been feeling tired all the time lately. Could it be because of old age?" James laughed. "There you go again, blaming age. You stay indoors all day. Don't go outside, and don't get any sunlight. How do you expect to feel energetic?" Seeing Thomas's puzzled expression, James explained, "Sunlight helps your body produce vitamin D, which is essential for your bones and immune system. Plus, natural light regulates your body's internal clock, helping you sleep better and stay in a good mood. Without enough exposure, you'll feel tired and low-spirited." Thomas thought for a moment and nodded. "That makes sense. So, what should I do?" "It's simple," James said. "In the morning, go outside for a walk for about 20 to 30 minutes. Or at least sit near a window to get natural light. If it's too cold, just stepping onto your porch will help." From that day on, Thomas decided to change his routine. He started going for morning walks and keeping his curtains open to let the sunlight in. Within just a week, he noticed a significant improvement. His mood lifted, his sleep improved, and he felt much more energetic. When he met James again, he smiled brightly and said, "You were right, just a little sunshine, and I feel years younger." One beautiful morning, Thomas was sitting on his chair reading the newspaper when he suddenly dropped his glasses onto the floor. He bent down to pick them up, but his legs didn't seem as flexible as before. After struggling for a while, he reluctantly called James for help. When James arrived, he noticed that Thomas was having difficulty getting up. "Are you okay?" James asked with concern. Thomas sighed. "My legs feel weaker and weaker. I don't think I'm as agile as I used to be." James chuckled. "Didn't I tell you? If you don't exercise, your legs will weaken, and that will affect your independence. Let me show you some simple exercises." James began teaching Thomas exercises to strengthen his legs. From standing up and sitting down, to heel raises, and short walks around the yard. He explained, "Strong legs help you stand up on your own, walk easily, and even go out and meet friends without needing assistance." At first, Thomas found it quite difficult, but after a few days of persistence, he realized that getting up from his chair was no longer a struggle. A week later, he could walk longer distances without feeling tired. When he met James again, he excitedly said, "You were right, I can't let my legs get weaker. Thanks to those exercises, I feel much stronger." James patted his friend's shoulder. "That's great, keep up this habit, and you'll notice an even bigger difference." From that day on, Thomas no longer sat still for too long. He always reminded himself, strong legs are the key to maintaining independence and fully enjoying life. One afternoon, Thomas was watering the plants in his garden when he suddenly tripped over a small brick. His body wobbled, nearly toppling over. Fortunately, he managed to grab onto the nearby fence just in time. His heart pounded as he sat down on a chair, letting out a sigh of relief. That evening, when he told James about the incident, his friend frowned. "You know, falling is one of the leading causes of serious injuries in older adults. You need to start training your balance right away." Thomas looked doubtful. "I'm not young anymore. Can it really be improved?" James laughed. "Of course, with the right exercises, you'll notice a big difference." The next day, James showed Thomas some simple exercises to improve his balance. He started by standing on one foot for a few seconds, gradually increasing the duration. Then, he practiced walking in a straight line, keeping his body steady without swaying. At first, Thomas found it challenging, but after just a week of training, he noticed he felt much more stable when moving. His steps became firmer, and he no longer worried about walking on uneven surfaces. One day, while carrying his grocery bag to the car, Thomas accidentally slipped, but this time, he quickly regained his balance. He chuckled to himself, thinking, "I'm glad I listened to James." From then on, Thomas realized that maintaining good balance not only helped prevent falls but also gave him confidence and independence in his daily life. One morning, Thomas stepped out onto his porch and took a deep breath. He realized that his body felt stronger than before, and his steps were lighter. Looking back over the past few months, he suddenly recognized that the changes didn't come from anything drastic but rather from the small habits he had consistently maintained. In the past, he used to sit on the couch for hours watching TV. But now he reminded himself to stand up and move around every 30 minutes. Instead of drinking coffee in the evening, he chose a cup of herbal tea to help him sleep better. When going to the supermarket, he parked a little farther away to get in a few extra steps. James, his close friend, smiled as he listened to Thomas recount his journey. "See, you didn't have to make any huge changes. Small actions, when accumulated daily, lead to a massive transformation." Thomas nodded in agreement. He understood that by staying committed to simple, consistent habits, both his body and mind would continue to improve. And most importantly, he felt more energized than ever before. Thomas realized that good health isn't just the result of major changes but rather the accumulation of small daily habits. Moving more, thinking positively, and getting enough sleep, all of these contributed to helping him live healthier, independently, and more energetically than ever before. Life is always changing, but your health doesn't have to decline with time. The small habits you maintain today will determine the quality of your life tomorrow. Start now, move more, think positively, take care of your sleep, and enjoy the sunlight. You deserve a healthy, vibrant life at any age. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more tips on improving health and overall well-being. See you in the next video.